Hey North City community leaders, how are you today? I'm shooting this quick video to give you some updates of things you need to know for this Sunday as you lead your North City communities. And I'm just coming to you with a word of encouragement as well. So first, just some details that you ought to know as you're thinking about leading your North City communities, and then I'll give you some encouragement. First, some of you might have heard Governor Walz gave out some more stringent guidelines for gatherings, even so much as to say that private gatherings, are limited to 10 people and no more than 3 different families at those gatherings, whether they're indoors or outdoors. So that's certainly got us, along with the spike in coronavirus cases happening in Minnesota, thinking about shifting digitally. And naturally, this week, and in part after the governor's announcement, all of the North City communities have decided to shift digitally. So I want to talk about that for a second. I'm going to include in the email that you will receive along with this video our original resources or training, a quick video about how you can, a template for leading a digital North City community that might be a resource for you, especially those who are pivoting digitally, to think through how to set that up. Of course, we trust your leadership in this, and many of you have already come up with really creative ideas. I just want to acknowledge that for some of us that there's a sadness in transitioning digitally. Some of you have been rocking digital for a long time and loving it, but some of us, there is a certain amount of sadness moving in that direction, and that's okay. But we can have innovation and come up with creative ways for this limited season of being digital. And it is a limited season, just want to say that we will be revisiting this maybe in a month or so about the safety, and you can be in contact with me about the guidelines the governor has put out, which has been our sort of bellwether about what we should do, and then what seems wise for your community to do as well. And you may be wondering what this means for the broader North City community gatherings, particularly our worship gatherings. And it does mean that we will be, and we haven't put this out broadly yet, but we will be pivoting to having digital worship gatherings on the off weeks of our North City gatherings as well. And I want you to know that, in part because we're trying to think of innovative ways for those to be places where people can connect as well and engage. And so we're innovating and trying to think of ways to maybe incorporate some more dialogue and discussion, which might look like getting on a Zoom call after our worship gatherings, our digital worship gatherings, and putting people into discussion groups, and we may organize those based on North City communities. So you can just be aware of that. More details, as I said, will come forth, and more instruction about how you can help us do that will come out before November 22nd, which is our next worship gathering. But our central driving hope in these times, even when we have to shift back digitally for some season, is to keep people connected, in caring relationships, and that's what they need most right now. So thank you for your leadership through this time. Those are some updates. So what I need from you this week is just your link and time that you'll be gathering, so that when we send out the North City community email, so that anybody who can join your group knows where to find it and how to jump onto your digital North City community gathering this week. I just want to encourage you guys. I know you all are leaders, not just of North City communities, but in many other areas of your lives. You're leading families, you're leading at work, and many of you, just like me in Christian and leading this church, have had to navigate really difficult moment-to-moment, week-to-week decisions and differences. And so I want to encourage you with this piece of leadership content, if you will, or leadership insight that I came across from John Gordon, who just came out with a book called The Garden. And what I loved about his work is he says, in order for every leader to wade through anxiety, fear, and stress, which seems like plentiful in 2020 and all that you and I are probably trying to lead into, in order for us to do that, we have to overcome what he calls 5 D's that the devil and the enemy tries to bring into our lives or enhance in our lives. And those 5 D's are ones that I hope to bring up with you as we navigate this hard season, as the weather turns. Maybe we need to do more digital things in a maybe more disconnected season. There's another D for you. But these 4 D's, I think, are something we're all going to have to press into and overcome in this season. Doubt, distortion, discouragement, distraction, and division. Doubt, distortion, discouragement, distraction, and division. I don't know about you, but as soon as I heard those 4 D's, I'm like, yes, those are things that are barriers to my own life and to my leadership. They're the things that create stress, anxiety, and fear in my own life. So I just this time want to center on that first one, doubt. And maybe you can put 2 and 2 together and realize that the garden is a reference to the Garden of Eden, which is true. This book isn't just a business type book. It's a fable. It's a story about 2 young people asking questions about leadership and faith. And it's a story that retells much of the Garden of Eden story. And doubt, that first one, you can notice how all 5 of these D's resemble what the serpent tries to do to Adam and Eve in the garden. The first is doubt. And of course, his infamous question for them, did God really say? Did God really say not to eat from the fruit? So I just want to acknowledge that in the season of sadness and tension and disconnection, that doubt is a really real thing in our lives as leaders. Maybe you're leading initiatives at work or in your own home, and you can identify and see doubt creeping into those endeavors. And you find yourself thinking about, hey, is this really worth it? Is this really making the impact that I had hoped it would make? Or is this all going to change next week? And those doubts start to creep in. So the question becomes, how do we engage in our doubt when it comes? And I want to rely on both John Gordon's encouragement and a voice we know well, Pastor Stephanie Williams, who wrote a whole book on navigating doubt. And her recommendation, to sum it up, is to stay curious in the midst of these seasons of doubt. And I just want to acknowledge that with your North City community, there might be doubt seeping in this time where it's frustrating to go digital, or it's frustrating just to be so disconnected, that there might be doubts creeping in to say, hey, is it worth it what I'm doing, the effort I'm putting in to organize these spaces for people to connect? And I just want to say some truth to you, which is how we overcome and combat doubt and trust in God's work. And the truth is that these spaces really matter. These spaces matter so much in the people's lives that you're creating them for. They are transforming people's demeanor. They are creating contexts of relationships that don't exist in people's lives. And they're creating context for conversations that are spiritually forming people in the midst of a pandemic. They matter so much. And we need to trust in the word that North City received, that you helped us to respond to, that God has called us to this way of church for this season. And if he called us to this space, then he's going to fulfill that calling and bring us through this and meet us in the midst of this. So in the coming weeks, as I continue to try to encourage you, I'm going to try to touch on those other D's, because I'm sure you're experiencing those as a leader of a North City community or everything else that you lead into. So bless you this week. Get me those links for your digital gathering. Check out the resource I post in the email. I'll also drop a description or the link in the description of this video. Bless you when you're in the face of doubt about leading these groups or leading anything else that God's called you to in your life. Remember that your response can be trust in the midst of that, and to stay curious about what God might do even when you don't know all the answers, when you don't know what's going to happen next.